Now, coronavirus testing is going to be available for taxi drivers, cleaners, pharmacists, other shop workers on the high street, anyone who gives in a high-risk job, even if you've got no symptoms, because we know that only 20% of those people who've got coronavirus do actually have the symptoms. So what difference is that going to make? Well, let's talk to Dr. Layla McCay, who's a director at the NHS Confederation. Good morning, Layla.
Good morning.
I have to say, this one of the things I've always thought was a bit strange is that, you're only going to get tested if you've got the symptoms. But actually, we need to know about people who haven't got the symptoms because there are far more of them. What do we hope to find out from this new pilot allowing all these people in high-risk jobs to get themselves tested?
Well, we know that people can have the virus before the symptoms start. So really what we hope to do is to spot those people, get them isolated, make sure they get the care that they need so that will hopefully reduce the transmission to other people as well.
But shouldn't we have been doing this quite a long time? I mean, I know they've had mass testing in care homes eventually. I know my aunt, there'd been a breakout and everyone was put in their rooms. And then my elderly aunt in her care home, I mean, they waited months to get tested, and now everyone getting tested. It makes sense. People in high-risk places, work or residents in care homes to be tested on a regular basis with or without symptoms. But shouldn't we have been doing all of this across the board for a long time? Or is this just about the fact they don't have the capacity, so they've been testing the priority people first?
Exactly. I think that this very much reflects the fact that for quite a while that this country was having to build up its testing capacity. At the beginning, it didn't have the capacity to test everyone. It was struggling to even have the capacity to test people who had symptoms. But that has been built up, and now what we're hearing is that actually there is more capacity than is even being used. So at this stage, it's right to crack on with it.
Well, that's the thing. Again, eventually, when you haven't got so many people with the virus having those symptoms, you are going to then see your testing capacity not being fully used up. What do you make of the Prime Minister's own deadline he'd set for the start of this month for all of the antigen tests? So the have you got the virus now tests, not the antibody tests, or have you had it in the past, but have you got the virus now test being returned within 24 hours? He missed that then. The latest confirmation of figures shows it's still being missed. 92% of people doing drive-in or walk-in tests, they're getting the results within 24 hours, which I think is pretty good. Only 1.8% of home tests. I'm not quite sure how the government can be in charge of what someone does once they've got that test, so I don't have an issue with that. But the big concern really is that 24% of people who are testing positive are not being contacted by test and trace workers. And that means that none of their contacts have been contacted as well. That's a big fail, isn't it?
I think that is a huge concern for leaders of the NHS who tell us that they're really relying on the test and trace system to make sure that they catch people, they contain the virus and protect the NHS. And what we have heard from the SAGE committee, for example, is that they're really looking for 80% of all people who test positive to have their contacts traced and for those to be isolated.
Why not 100%? This is the bit I don't understand. When you go and get one of these tests, you give your name, you have to give your telephone number, your address, all these details. We've got that information. Why is it not possible to find a quarter of those people? That's the bit I think a lot of us are confused by.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I guess that there's all sorts of practicalities involved in that.
I bet you anything. You put my production team and me on that. You put my 13-year-old on that. They'd be able to track them down.
I mean, I do think that all of us are looking to see the test and trace system improve its hit rate. We don't want to see this huge number of people being missed out. Clearly, there's all sorts of challenges to that they're having to work through, but we're very strongly hoping that they are working through those things because we need to see those numbers increase, and they haven't been, and that's really worrying for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a very big concern, isn't it? Dr. Layla McCay, Director of the NHS Confederation, very much appreciate you joining me.